All right, let's get this party started. I'm going to put the word out and then get fired up because this is a lot to talk about yet again. Like I said, the content gods never seem to stop dropping content on my lap. And good, bad, and in between, at least we have stuff to talk about, I guess. And I'm not going to shy away from the elephant in the room, apparently, because, a lot of people are still weighing in on this. A lot of people who probably shouldn't weigh in on this topic. A lot of people feel they need to inject whatever aspect of themselves in because they just have to. Because, as I said in my mental health vlog earlier, and I meant it, this was the last bastion of respectability. This was a award show that white people could, gatekeep what is art, what entertains you all in Tinseltown. And black people show what happens when you fuck around on our name. You find out and you have consequences, and a lot of you don't understand that life. And you made it clear on social media that you don't understand that life, that you weigh in about how Will Smith should have just turned the other cheek, or this was violence and there was no place for it. And I will concede that Will losing his cool was uncivilized. I will concede that smacking somebody on such a big setting is shocking. I don't agree that he shouldn't have did it. You will never get me to agree with that level because it wasn't your pain. And I thought about showing the clip, but I don't want to keep putting that joke out there to the world. Because some of you aren't getting it anyway. You keep making it about, well, she shouldn't have gotten upset about the G.I. Jane reference anyway because it was about a strong woman. That wasn't the point. That wasn't where he was going with that joke, and you know it. I know a lot of you deep down know the mean-spiritedness that joke was supposed to be. That's why Chris pulled that punch. And I don't want to hear how it was Amy Schumer who wrote the joke. Chris is still the one that fired it out of his mouth because we are a low-hanging fruit for such jokes. And I'm tired of people saying, well, if it had been Amy that said it, but it wasn't Amy that said it. If it had been Amy that said it, maybe Jada would have walked her ass up on the stage and smacked her. Who knows? All I know is that black pain is once again on display, and people ignore it because you would rather just focus on the fact that Chris got smacked and not the fact that it was his words that got him smacked. Some of you try to twist things, some of you try to pull from that fact, but it leads so heavily into the topic I was going to bring up tonight anyway. That whole idea of the good ones. When you're black, you realize early on that you are going to be pressed into either being considered a good one or being what people consider, that stereotypical style black person. And it's a horrible world to navigate. Just wanting to find acceptance in yourself, wanting to be who you truly are. Embrace stuff that you were raised around. And realize that some of it is toxic and you can't carry that with you. But some of it really does mold you into a person that is not only likable, but can be accepted. But then you got to realize that levels of acceptance isn't always good as well. The whole respectability. They'll let us respectability ourselves into our early graves so that they feel comfortable. They don't care in the internal discomfort it causes black people. They don't care about the damage it does to our mental and physical spirit. Y'all just want us to be palatable for you. And this incident is a highlight of that. Oh, we're supposed to just take digs at our personal appearance. Even though for black women especially, we've heard it all of our lives. We have processed our follicles. We have done things to ourselves just to try to fit into what you think is beauty and comfort. And it has literally broken us. I think about Chelsea Chris. She was beautiful enough to win Miss America. But the constant struggles of trying to survive in a world that devalues and dehumanizes you for something that is completely out of your control There's no income level. There's no level of supposed beauty that absolves us from it. We see everything from the Duchess of Sussex to Jada Pinkett Smith, how easily it is to pick at us from all sides. If we're with a black man, we're supposed to be able to just handle the digs at us. If we're with a white man, we're supposed to allow them to protect us from it. But that's not the reality of our situation. There is no such thing as the good ones. But we have been so conditioned to believe that we could be a good one, that enough white people praising us as one of the good ones, one of the acceptable ones, will somehow shield us, somehow give us an insulation, but it doesn't. If anything, we internalize so much of the hate, of the just ire of who we are, that it comes out, it lashes out. And I feel like Chris, especially, he leans into it because he got to be acceptable. He's at that economic accepted level. He's at that fame accepted level that gives him a bit more of a cushion as a black man. So him punching down at Jada didn't seem like a big deal to him because, hey, I get enough accolades for it. People will hire me again. People will be around me again. People will talk about me again. This whole clout culture that we have cultivated over the years, this whole mystique of fame that we have cultivated over the years, have boiled over into this. And some of y'all aren't really ready to have these conversations, but we have to start having these conversations because the world has changed. And those of us who have constantly been on the receiving end of punching bags, those of us who have tried our best to try to be the good ones, realize that is a waste of time, energy, and literally causes nothing but health problems, both mentally and physical health problems. We realize that we can't take this anymore. And while what Will did in terms of respectability wasn't all right, for me, I felt his slap in my black spirit. I felt it for Jada when I seen that look in Jada Pinkett Smith's eyes when that joke went off, when the room was just laughing at her condition. And I know some people are like, oh, how is not having hair a disability? Alopecia is a skin disease. But even if it wasn't alopecia, even if she had chose that look for herself because that's just how she wanted to be, it is not there for your comedy fodder. The fact that we even have to say this in this day and age is the shameful thing. But the fact that you'll have these people who want that because they're insecure to mock, because that's all they have going for them. How they utilize our pain to help shield their own insecurities. Because they weren't allowed to be who they were. And they realized that they could be popular punching down. They could be popular insulting. The fact that insult comedy is still a thing in this day and age is the most shameful thing about this. And welcome to the chat, Yoga with Mo. And I think that's why a lot of people, they just don't want to have these conversations. I've seen it all over social media, even today, talking about and for black women like you know us. This one lady had the nerve, and I don't believe it because it's Twitter. It's like anybody can be anything online. It's like that State Farm commercial, I'm a French model, bonjour. But this white lady, apparently Irish lady, like y'all haven't had your own twisted history with this country, had to weigh in about how black women are sharing our pain just a little bit too much for her. We're just explaining our hurt with being mocked too much for her. And that real black women, just her words, real black women handle things quietly. Let me see if I can find this asinine thing, because I responded to it. And I shouldn't. I know that this shit is just how they do, just how they are with themselves. They think they know us because they push themselves on us. They think they know us because they think they're our friends, but we're not saying that back to them and they can't get it. But you know, Wild Irish Rose says things like, I have not casually dismissed the struggles of black women or black people as whole, but this poor, pitiful me BS. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. and my black experience when we've all had struggles and experiences. So boo freaking who? Yeah, she's real empathetic. You can tell. All the black women that I love and admire don't piss and moan, they rise. Fuck you, Wild Irish Rose. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat this. We rise? Maybe we wouldn't have to rise if your people weren't fucking stepping on us. Where we rising from, Rose? Oh, you don't want to talk about what we rise about. You don't want us to vocalize what we're rising above. But you realize we have to rise because we're at the fucking bottom. This is why I say there's no such thing as a good one, y'all. If you are black today, if you are any non-white person today, you have to get out of that mindset of being the good one. They tried the good one, Will Smith. And you see the moment he shows that level that you cannot cross with him anymore as a black man. When he shows that anger that has probably built up over years of being acceptable and taking bullshit constantly. When he finally shows that, no, I'm not going to take that anymore and fucking acts the way most of us, when we hurt, act. The acceptableness isn't palatable to y'all no more. You got assholes like Wild Irish Rose who like to say that they know black women because of the black women they love. The respectable black women. Some of the black women that were on social media saying, well, Will did was wrong. What he did was wrong. He shouldn't have gone to that point. We have to look a certain way. I get home training, y'all. We've all had to deal with the home training, that constant in your ear, that the things you do reflect on your home and house. I believe in home training. I believe in civility to a certain extent. But I also believe that if you fuck around, you're going to find out. I have always been about that life because you have to be. As a black girl especially, we are constantly disrespected. We are constantly talked down to. We always have experts like this asshole talking about how we rise. What we rising from, Wild Irish Rose? Miss, I'm allegedly a civil rights attorney. If you're getting your civil rights advice from this asshole, you're in trouble. People like her are a dime a dozen. They are the fucking Miss Millies of the conversation. Everything I've done for you people. How dare you talk about your plight? How dare you talk about what hurts you internally? It bothers me. Can't you think about my feelings? They are fucking constant, and they have been here all weekend since the slap happened. They don't give a fuck about what led up to that emotional outburst. They don't care about the cause or the root of why he got upset. They just want the Oscars to be that palatable boringness that it always has been. And I'm sorry that you got a little bit shook, Gladys. I'm sorry that your sensibilities got slapped along with Chris Rock, but it wasn't about you. The fact that they were doing things like bringing up Betty White. What would have been Betty White? Betty White doesn't need to do it. When she was alive, because I think some of you forgot that, rest her soul, she passed in January of this year. But when she was alive, she wasn't making a name for herself shitting on black women. Matter of fact, she was a real one. She was an ally. She wouldn't be saying bullshit like this nonsense. But y'all invoke white women like Betty White, not even realizing that she was about that life. She wasn't about hurting people just because she could. She wasn't about using her power as a white woman to bring us down. But some of you think you are about that life because you hang around black people. You might even date us. You might even be close enough in our life to where you can understand it, but you still don't feel our pain. You don't want us to talk about it. You think it'll just go away if we're acceptable. This gargoyle that I'm going to bring up the picture of, and the little marriage photo too. Let me get that for y'all because it's a fucking mess. But this lady, Ginny, she is a prime example of one of the people who believe that we're the good ones. This is Clarence Thomas's wife. And exactly, she was funny and she didn't have to go that level. That's why I said we are feeling the end throes of the insult comics, the people who need to punch down, and they cannot stand that change in the guard. And welcome to the chat, G. Feldman. But this one, she's a prime example of that white woman that is black adjacent enough who uses her husband to try to have that air of, I understand the black people's cause, even though your literal words were, the reason I married Clarence was he wasn't like black people. We didn't even see him as that. That whole I don't see color brigade that get on my last fucking nerves. And the shit that Ginny Thomas did should not only make Clarence Thomas no longer a viable Supreme Court justice. Hell, if you had to be honest, because I was alive back during his confirmations, his own sexual harassment leans and actions towards Anita Hill should have gotten him disqualified. But women like Ginny, seeing that power, seeing that adjacency, seeing that puppet that she could utilize in her husband, she made it so. And they plotted. And there are texts, clear texts from a wife of a sitting Supreme Court justice helping with last year's insurrection. And we cannot just let this die. She is everything that's wrong with America, Yoga. Exactly. She said, hell, this great president stand firm. Trump was not a great president. We have over 800,000 lives lost because of this man on our own soil, because he downplayed the pandemic. We have global conflicts that he helped stoke. Allies that he left in the cold, in the dust, and instability that he helped foster. He was not a good president. He was the worst thing that happened to the American presidency since its inception. And I don't say that lightly because, like, unlike some people, I actually study history. It is a very passionate topic of mine. So when I say that Donald Trump was the worst U.S. president, I don't say that hyperbolic. And we don't even have to look that far into his presidency to see everything he did wrong. He targeted Americans based on their orientation. He targeted Americans based on their faith with the Muslim ban and transgender ban. 4 GIs died in Africa, and we still don't know the details of why that happened. Or why mercenary groups were doing things like that. Literal contracts on our soldiers' lives by his best old buddy Putin, who is now literally waging war in the Ukraine. A failing war at that, where his generals are getting off. Donald Trump was the worst thing that happened to American people. And the only people who seem to think that he was a good thing were these ridiculously indoctrinated right-wing assholes who marry black men, like Clarence, because he's one of the good ones. This is bullshit. Look at how she stares at him. It's not love in her eyes. That is, this man will say and do what I need him to do because he's one of the good ones. Proper little servant in her theocracy dreams. Because they are raised from the cradle to believe that their Christian faith, their revolution, their apocalypse will lead them into some paradise kingdom, and the rest of the heathens will burn because that is the only way for them to feel religious fervor. It is disgusting. They have no appreciation of life. They have no appreciation of the Christ they supposedly worship. All they care about is power. And we have let these people lead riots and access to weapons and cause mass destruction. For what? This isn't leading anybody into anything gloriful. It's just more chaos and heartbreak and destruction. And it was wild. It just drives me up a wall how many people side with that, though. How many people believe that, oh, you know, if you're just more respectable like Clarence Thomas, he literally sexually harassed a woman. Talking about pubic hairs. I remember those freaking, that whole thing was wild because even though I was young, I understood that this man, the things he said, the things he was doing was not right. Yet he got the spot on the Supreme Court, the Thurgood Marshall, a man who was the standards that most of us should aspire to, the man that the standards that our current nominee aspires to, even though she had to be dogged out by awful people like Ted Cruz all week. The fact is, the whole idea of respectability is bullshit. But when you put that out there, all y'all want is a Clarence puppet. You don't care if he has feelings. You want him to shed those feelings. You want him to be just as anti-black and hateful as you can make him, because deeply rooted in this religious theocracy is the fact that we're beneath you. We're animals. We aren't ever going to be good enough, but we can be adjacent enough. And if you can utilize us for your sexual frustrations, if you can utilize us for free labor, even better. But the dehumanization is the root of it, and it's tiring. I know I follow a lot of people on Twitter, but I saw a tweet that really set me off. The whole idea that you're putting out there tweets talking about your political beliefs shouldn't end friendships. And I have a lot of former people that are still heavily conservative that try to press me with that whole idea, that respectability nonsense. And no, I'm going to tell you what the problem with that whole nonsense is right off the bat. Your beliefs are rooted in dehumanization, whether you're dehumanizing women because our place is behind you and just popping out babies, whether it hurts us or not. Your idea that traditional marriage matters when you've seen the breakdown of that so many times because it's not a partnership, it's a hierarchy and it doesn't work. When you devalue your partner, when your partner has no say in the relationship, when you try to put that structure control until it breaks, it's not working. But you don't want to hear it because it works for you and your pleasure center. When you come into things so fucking self-centered and selfish, and then you wonder why it's not working for anybody around you and why we need change. But when you shit on people because of their sexual orientation or how they identify or their gender, and then you wonder why we push back. The problem with Ginny Thomas is she is the product of so many Christian households right now that raise young women to believe that your source of power is in your man. And if you can mold him into the place he needs to be, that's a good thing, instead of balance and both of you bringing equal measure to your home and having that harmony. Oh, that's too much. That's too wishy-washy. I can't be that toxic male that handles things. And I know people will be like, well, Tin, you just said that you supported Will Smith handling things. That's the duality of it, isn't it? I don't want everything to be handled by violence, but I grew up where things were handled that way. I grew up where an action got that equal action. And if you stepped over a boundary, you were smacked back. It's not every time. It was just used to show you that you stepped too far. I think in a balanced household, sometimes you do snap and lose your cool and show that side of yourself. It shouldn't be all the time, though. And I think in a balanced household, it doesn't happen all the time because it's not needed. And if more of us had balanced households where everybody felt viable, where everybody's voice mattered, where it isn't, oh, you make more, so you get more of a say. It's, you make this much. We all contribute to the household coming together, and this is the way it's supposed to be. But we have entitled so many bad attitudes, so many things that make imbalanced households. That whole, we want to go backwards to the 1950s, lean, that I keep harping on because it is such a fallacy. The 1950s was not a good time for a lot of people. Even the people that claim that it was for them because they seen those pictures of those happy, smiling, plastic families. Ignoring the fact that the wife was probably drinking herself to death, the husband was probably drinking himself to death, if not pill cocktailing it up. The people who weren't considered that white American dream lived their own nightmares of Jim Crow related. You can't sit here, or you can't live here, or you can't be in this area. Education isn't for you. Hospitals aren't for you. The reality is, even amongst your people, white people, there was a hierarchy. There were certain white people that weren't white enough for your own standards. And then when you realize that there are more black people filling up this nation, there are more people of color filling up this nation, we had to open up that gatekeeping a little bit more to let in certain groups. That's why that wild Irish Rose chick irks me. Talking about we rise. Bitch, your people weren't even considered white in this country for the longest time. You got led on that bus and you just couldn't wait to give us the finger as you drove away. Full on embracing that white supremacy that didn't even accept you back in the day. It is appalling, the whole idea of the good ones, because some of you just want that. I look at some of my Italian friends and family too, because I consider a lot of my Italian friends just like family back in the day. But they sure as hell embrace that whiteness. Staten Island is always a messy borough, but it just felt even worse these last few years. Watching people who should know better, protesting things like masks, protesting things like protecting themselves, being pro-Donald Trump when we lived in, we knew that man was a crumb bum. You didn't have to listen to him for more than 5 minutes to realize that he wasn't a fucking about anything but himself. But some of y'all really embrace the toxic. And as a Gen Xer, I just side-eye because years ago, we were supposedly BFFs, thick as thieves, close. But I guess enough of that white acceptance seeped into your pores. My black ass don't matter to you no more, even though y'all put BLM in your profile on Facebook or on Twitter, and you say the most anti-black bullshit and then expect our friendship to save you from yourself. No, thank you. So my sentiment of the whole my politics shouldn't end friendships, your politics are rooted in my dehumanization. If your politics is rooted in saying that you're better than somebody because of your income levels or your supposed faith in God, then no, you don't deserve my friendship. I'm not going to be your good one. I don't need your pat on the head. I am so sick of that line. That shit was the most prevalent thing in these talks this week. The most prevalent thing about the Oscars was how many people called Will Smith one of the good ones. One of the comparisons I seen. You would see that out of Tom Hanks. Who the fuck knows? You can call Tom Hanks' wife out of her face too many times. I think even he would take freaking issue with it. But we're just expected as black women to constantly take disrespect and be put on that level with white people who never deal with that level of personal disrespect. And it's tiring. I don't want to be one of the good ones. I don't even think Clarence started out wanting to be one of the good ones, but we socially condition ourselves. A lot of the anti-blackness that I had to unlearn was taught from the people around me, because we are given this false sense of respectability in the black community, this false sense if we're adjacent enough, if they think we're less threatening enough. We code speak around y'all. We change our hair and our appearance. We try to look less threatening. And it's like, what about my natural hair is a threat to you? What about my skin tone is a threat to you? If I am literally being threatening to you, I'm telling you right now, you pulled that shit out of me, because I don't want constant conflict. I just want peace. But I'm not going to act like when I'm heated that I can't be deadly serious. And thank you, Jifa, especially. I think people don't understand that about our collective groups at all. That whole idea that we have to turn the other cheek constantly as people shit on our way of life. I don't deal with anti-Semitic people at all. I don't like them. I'm not going to act like their ideology, which dehumanizes Jewish people, has any place in my world. And it's the same for anybody who's anti-LGBT. I realize that, especially back in the day, I was not the kind of friend that an LGBT person should or could have. And it wasn't even that I was openly hateful. I just didn't push back. I didn't stand up to the bullies enough. I laugh at jokes that aren't funny, that don't land with me, like they did back in the day when I was trying to be acceptable. And I realized that I had to work on that. And it is not an easy process, but admitting it is a first step. Admitting that I will never fully understand that life, and that it's not my job to talk over their experience, but to listen, to amplify, to understand that I might not fully understand it, but I shouldn't downplay it. That was the one thing I learned about anti-Semitism. I have so many dear friends that are constantly in the good fight. I realized early on that, yeah, if something seems off about something somebody said about Jewish people, it is better to listen and ask than to assume. It is not my job to be y'all's bullhorn about your lived experience. And it is definitely not my job to downplay. That's why I backed the fuck off the Whoopi thing. While yes, I felt her punishment for me was a bit harsh, it was necessary because what she said caused pain. And it is not my place to say how a Jewish person should feel about their history, a very painful history, being downplayed. And it has nothing to do with me being respectful. It's just a fucking human being. I realized that in the same vein, I want that same respect for how Jada felt being mocked for her appearance. We all have levels. And you shouldn't cross those levels just to get a laugh. You shouldn't cross those levels just because you don't understand. And why in this day and age can't we understand things? You might not feel certain people's ways are culturally relevant to you. It doesn't mean they're not allowed to have that cultural tie to who they are. You might not like a certain aesthetic for yourself. That's on you. It doesn't mean those people with those aesthetics shouldn't be allowed to live and exist. And the fact that we are still trying to have these conversations in this day and age because humans just can't seem to get off this train of power being through hate and fear and subjecting people to stuff is shameful. And it has to stop. It is exhausting. The fact that the Oscars' only buzzworthy moment was the fact that an actor who is known as being the good guy, the nice one, finally snapped because you decided to make a bald joke about his wife. And for those of you who don't get why it hurts, why somebody as beautiful as Jada shouldn't let that get to her. It does. Because for all the so-called beauty that you and praise that you'll heap on one thing, you're constantly heart negative. It is the duality of existing in this world. For everybody that wants to build you up, you have almost an equal, if not more, number of people that tear you down because that's all they've got going for them. People want to pick apart the Smiths, relationship. Honestly speaking, I am team mind my business when it comes to people's private lives like that. I just don't see the need to stick my nose in people's affairs. I think it's just too much. I've always hated that aspect of Hollywood, that gossip nonsense, that tidbit about who's sleeping with who's doing who. And I know a lot of people are passing judgment on the Smiths because of Jada and Will's business being put out there. And I think minding your own business is a lot better for your health and well-being than minding theirs. But I get it. Some of y'all ain't got stuff going on in your life, and this is all you've got going is minding other people's business. It says more about you than them. They're the ones leading the interesting lives. You're the one reading about it and getting salty. How's that helping you any? But to say that she deserves to be punched down on because of the complex nature of her relationship is dumb. Because the same people who push that, I guarantee you, there was something about them. Something, whether it's visible or internalized about them, that if Chris Rock had said that about them, they would be just as upset. Everybody has a limit. Everybody has that boundary that the moment you cross, it is too far. And maybe we need to stop having award shows that try to branch out that insult comic. Maybe it needs to stop being a venue for somebody who punches down. Who's going to host the Oscars next? Dave Chappelle? I'm sure the LGBT community needs that nonsense. LGBT community doesn't need that nonsense. And I'm not putting it out there for the Oscars to do that shit. And I'm not even anti-comedian. I just realized that comedians need to reflect the world they're in, and the world has changed. And people are fucking tired of being your low-hanging fruit punchline. And if you can't adapt your ability to tell a funny story, your ability to say anecdotal things, because that has been comedy for the last, since I've been born, has been anecdotal stories. If you can't tell your truths and your comedy without shitting on another group that's already going through it, you don't need to be in this business. It really is that simple. And exactly, G. Feldman, these are consenting adults. And while, yeah, it might seem messy to an outsider, why are you looking in their business anyway? I've learned being team mind my business has given me so much more contentment in my life. I've got my own life and house to worry about. I can't be chasing what celebrities do. And honestly speaking, I just never liked that kind of messy interaction with human beings anyway, so it's never been my thing. But a lot of y'all out here minding the Smiths' business, talking about what levels Jada should accept because they're not living a clean life. Y'all ain't living a clean life. A lot of you that are very judgmental know what you're doing. Sitting up in church in 1 minute and then doing dirty shit in the next. Y'all are always the most judgmental types too. Your house ain't clean, but you want to talk about how other people are doing their upkeep. Mind your business. Y'all live longer. Mind your business, and your business will probably be more better. No, y'all sticking your nose in everybody else's thing. And some of you aren't even old enough to where this is the only thing you got going on for you. Because I can understand how somebody who's elderly that really has nothing else going better for them can just sit there having their nose in everybody else's business. But those of you who are my age and younger doing this shit, come on now. Just live your life. Stop living your life through these celebrities. It's embarrassing at this point. They're not your best friends. They're not your counselors. They're real human beings. And just like you fuck up and step in it, they're going to fuck up and step in it. For you to be judgmental about when they do that, like you just somehow above them socially or any kind of morally, nah. I see you. I've seen a lot of you when I was especially back in the church days, before I walked away from the evangelical leans. You will smile and praise the Lord in one breath and then talk shit about people. So many of the just anybody who was not that traditional Christian bullshit that I had to unlearn. The homophobic nonsense. One of the things that floored me was the first time I was even introduced to intermixed couple. One of my uncles married a white woman. And the amount of smiles people would do in his face while they talked complete nasty shit behind his back. Talk bad about his wife. I didn't know much about my aunt. She was a quiet woman. She might have been like another Ginny Thomas. I don't know. All I do know is that she heard y'all. And she just kept it to herself. And it goes both ways. For every Ginny, there might have been somebody like my aunt who just wanted to be with my uncle and live that experience and had to deal with hateful shit. And it's got to stop. We can't say we want equality and then be awful. We can't say we want harmony but still uplift that adjacency to toxicness. It gets us nowhere. And that whole idea of acceptability and respectability is rooted in that stuff. Whatever happened to just letting people be? Whatever happened to letting people exist? I think that scares people because we have rooted so many structural power systems. So much caste system is still rooted in our culture. Some people are just born better. Some people are just born worthy. That's bullshit. We all know it. We see it now. We see it as that monarchy has fumbled their way through the Caribbean, going home with their tails tucked behind their legs because that archaic symbol of, well, some people are just born lucky, some people are just powerful, is bullshit. And we know it. We know that with education and support, any human can achieve great things. But what a lot of people don't want is that support system because they fear that their place within a supportive system wouldn't be big enough, wouldn't be flashy enough, wouldn't show that they're better than. And that whole better than attitude has been detrimental to human society far too long. If you are still rooting your abilities and your being in shitting on somebody else, whether they're female, whether they're male, whether they're black, white, POC, whether they're a certain faith or cultural ties, you're doing humanity wrong. You're doing yourself dirty. It is a slow, suffocating toxin that poisons your heart and soul and mind. And you have to free yourself of that. I think it's hard for people because it's so ingrained in us to have that better than system. And it doesn't suit us at all. It's not going to get you closer to that supposed paradise kingdom. And if it did, honestly speaking, if this is the Christian faith in a whole, to get into some paradise where people who have been judgmental to everything I represent, everybody that I love and care for, that they don't. I don't want an afterlife like that. I'm not living this existence to be stuck in an eternal existence with harmful, hateful people. And I don't think you understand how off-putting that is for a lot of us. If that is what you're trying to wholesale people like me, you can keep that to yourself. That is not okay. I think people need to understand that it is not your faith that we're pushing back against. The Christian faith in whole, when you look at some of the core messages of it, any faith in whole, when you look at their core message of love, understanding, peace, reverence, keeping yourself whole, keeping your house clean, loving your neighbor. Most faith has those guidelines, but that's what they're supposed to be. Guidelines, not gates to keep people out. But some of you treat it like that, like religion is some personal country club where you can just recruit some and then mock others, and then you wonder why so many people are just walking away from it altogether. That connection is severing because it is not sustainable. And the fear of being ostracized for being too smart or questioning things or daring to embrace science, which I never understood why people think you can't have a scientific mind and a theological path. You can. It's just a lot of times you are going to question things. And if somebody of faith gets mad at your questions instead of just saying, I don't know. That's the whole point, is understanding things. No true faith should push against us understanding and knowing more. That's why I've always embraced shamanism, witchcraft especially. I know people are like, oh, witchcraft is a bad thing. It's bad because people didn't want women to have knowledge. The fear of women being smarter is so rooted in control, and it's just tiring. And I refuse. I know I am not the smartest person on the earth, but I know that I don't have to stop seeking knowledge. It is a slower process than somebody who can get stuff and retain memory easier, but I'm not going to stop. I have the ability now, even better than back when I was lugging around heavy encyclopedias and books, pouring myself in the knowledge in any kind of publication I could get my hands on. Now I can just scan digitally every day as I craft and create stories and worlds. I am fortunate enough and the ability to read stuff in different languages now, which is a luxury a lot of people don't even look into. And you should. Learning different languages is a beautiful thing that opens up more worlds and doors for you. Too many people want to stay rooted in ignorance. And it's not your fault all the time. You're crafted that way. You're told that you're good little Christian soldiers. You're told that your path and whatever faith path you have will guide you if you just don't think about it. But you should be thinking about it. And you should realize that this world is changing and you're going to have to change with it if things are going to get better for all of us. And it's not always a painful thing if you don't make it that way. But some of you will fight tooth and nail because you've been trained from the cradle to be water carriers for fuckery, those perfect little foot soldiers. It doesn't matter how miserable you all are, as your small towns rot away from greed and corruption, as you fear everything that doesn't look like you to the point of getting a gun and settling things that way. That instability is not a feature we should be condoning anymore. But yet we do it. And we look at women like Ginny Thomas as, oh, we need to protect her from her own bad judgment, her own bigotry and prejudice. But shit on Jada Pinkett Smith because she's a little bit too loose. How dare a woman embrace her sexuality? We have to be meek and proper. That's our version of the good ones. We can be sultry, but only behind closed doors, girls, right? It's bullshit. How we carry ourselves has been molded and crafted by toxic bullshit. So long that it has broken some of the best of us. And it is okay to embrace your sexuality in a healthy way that you feel comfortable with. It is not okay to continuously dictate to women how we should feel about our own nature. And that shouldn't scare men, because in a partnership, a woman who knows who she is, who is confident in who she is a better partner for you than some insecure, scared person that you can yell at and get bored with until you mold the next one. Sick of this nonsense. We know it's not sustainable. You know it's not sustainable, but yet you still keep pushing that cycle. It's got to stop, y'all. It's exhausting. Being one of the good ones is exhausting. And I'm saying this to women right now. Y'all are all right. You don't have to be that good girl all the time if that's not what you're feeling. You don't have to act out for attention either. You have to find that balance within who you are so that you can walk this earth and not let it break you. I know the weight of the world is on women's shoulders sometimes, and I wish I could make it better, but carrying yourself a certain way is the best bet. And sometimes you might feel yourself walking alone, because I know I did that for a good long time. 15 years before Axiom and I officially made it official. I was walking that path by myself because I needed to. I needed to be on my own, figuring out the 10 I wanted to be. Being able to like the 10 I see, whether other people like it or not. I'm not here to be for everybody. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Y'all don't need to drink me. I'm not for you. I had to be all right with me. And once I got that, once I realized that I am okay with me, things changed. I was able to start focusing on the things about myself that I could get help for. The things about myself that I have issue with, that I still struggle with, that I didn't want to bind me. And exactly, G. Feldman, when you get to that point, it really does. It's like shackles being let off your ankle and from around your throat. And like I said, it's not 100% process, because we are still in a world where people are nasty and they try to get at us. But it's easier to deflect their bullshit when you are feeling secure within yourself. But like I said, there is not an income level, there's not an acceptability standard that is 100% going to set a boundary that can't be crossed for us. Everybody has that irritated spot. I just want a world where we stop making it a punchline, an acceptable punchline to do it. People's physical flaws are not there for you to mock, and really says low about your character. Like, you are a low life if that is the only thing you've got going for you to make you popular. And there are far too many people that don't want to hear this. They don't like that calling out because they never settled the things that truly bother them. They never settled their insecurities. We see it all the time in the world of writing, in the world of comedy, how people lash out their own pain and they get a laugh, so they think, well, this is the formula for me. This is how I'm going to rectify all the stuff that I felt shitty about. And it's not working anymore because those of us who've been a constant target of pain, who realize we don't want to keep that cycle going, are sick of it too. One of the things that I struggled hard against, surviving being bullied, surviving all kinds of different tactics from horrible people, whether it was abusive partners, whether it was my parents, was not continuing that. It's hard. There are times where I realize that fear and intimidation work. I said it on Twitter yesterday about dealing with the bully that was harming kiddo in elementary school and taking it to the source. I hated that I was that angry at that point. But hearing my baby cry, hearing the pain, and he didn't talk much back then, so that made it worse. My non-verbal child crying out because this kid decided he wanted to put his hands on him because he just didn't like him. And I realized, I'm not going to bully a child, but that shit has a source. So I took all that hurt and anger that I felt at the school for condoning it, because it felt like at that point, these kids are allowed to be this way way too much. You're calling me up, I'm already stressed out at work, with my child crying and like, oh, we'll handle it. No, I'm going to handle it. And that's what I did. No problem. Welcome back to the chat. I went into a crowded room. It was a literary night of all things. I knew she was going to be there, and I threatened her in front of everybody because I was mad. I was heated. And I hoped that she would overstep her bounds because she was younger than me at the time. Young black mom. I didn't know how it was going to play out, but I was ready for a fight at that point because protecting my son was on my mind. And I realized, growing up in New York especially, you whip somebody's ass well enough, they'll leave you alone and they'll keep the problem at bay. But I think just the coldness of what I said, the follow-up, because she tried to get her kid to hug kiddo, and I was like, no, do not touch my son. What part of that did you understand? I was dead serious. And like I said, I know some of the moms thought what I did was uncalled for, but I don't care at that point. You do not fuck with my child. You do not make his growing up, his formative process, a miserable time. Bullying is a product of what's going on in your home. So my thought process is to nip that shit in the bud in its source. And I use the same fear tactics that I watched my dad use on people when he wanted them to do what he needed them to do. It's not a proud moment for me, but it's a moment that I will utilize. And she, fortunately, realized it. This woman's serious. Her son stopped bothering my son. From what I found out, her son stopped bothering a lot of kids after that. Maybe she started disciplining him more. Maybe she started paying attention to him more. Because a lot of these bullies act out because they're not getting enough attention at home. I don't know. I didn't do a follow-up because I'm not CPS. All I know is that I wanted her little fucking terror burglar to stop tormenting my son. And that action made a reaction happen. And it made a positive reaction. Sometimes you fuck around and you find out. Sometimes you have to deal with the anger that your nonsense caused. Whether you're a famous person or whether you're nobody like me who is just trying to keep my kids safe. Everybody has a level that you shouldn't cross with another human being. With me, it's my son. Like I said, I keep it civil to a certain point. But you fuck with my baby and that's it for you. He is my world. And I realized that I put a lot of that into him because I didn't have that. I had to fight for any kind of compassion and emotion from the person who should have given it to me freely. But that wasn't who she was. My dad wasn't around, and when he was, it wasn't always a good time. I've wrestled with that most of my life. I'm still struggling with it, if I can be honest, but I'm dealing with that internal process. And I realize because of it, I am super protective of kiddo. I want him to say, it wasn't always the greatest time with mom. She's a bit strict at things, but she loves me. We are mother and son, and she has my back. And if he could say that, and we can have a decent relationship when he's older, I know I've done my job. But I know that I carry a lot of pain. And like I said, I try not to let things set me off. And it's no longer because I want to be one of the good ones or air civility or even any of that home training that I have, because I don't care what people think about my house anymore. If my house is happy, I don't care if somebody down the block thinks, oh, that house is wild, or I don't know about them, they're mysterious. I don't care. People shouldn't be up in my business anyway. I have stopped living my life worrying about what people think about everything about me, because that shit's exhausting. I'm lucky that I can detach myself from that. And I wish more people would, because it's not healthy living my life worrying about what other people think about me. There are always going to be those who want to think negative about me. And if I lived that life, if I had lived that existence where I'm constantly letting other people's thoughts on who I am guide who I am, I'd be broken again. And I've been that low way too many times in 40 years, and I'm just done with that. But that is my level. And it took years and so many close calls to get to this point. And it's not an easy journey. And like I tell everybody, it's not 100%. You are always walking a tightrope where one bad day could just be it for you. So I need people to understand that as you take your pot shots at the Smiths, as you make your comments about black women as if you're an expert when you are a definite outsider, or even if you're supposedly a sister girl trying to talk for all of us. I tried to speak on this tonight from my POV. I don't know what mindset Jada was in. All I know is that when that joke was said, I seen the hurt look in her eyes. She might not have even been feeling that, but I feel like that's what it was. I don't speak for her. She can speak for herself, which I'm sure she will eventually, because she has that celebrity status too, and she has a show too. But what I need people to understand is that we're not a monolith, but we all have levels that you shouldn't cross, that you shouldn't just mock because you think it's an easy thing to do. And that if you do that, the pushback that you get, whether it's a slap, whether it's a loss of income or a career, whether people cancel you, that is the effect, that is the consequence of your action. Exactly, G. Feldman. I think too many people want to just be hurtful, harmful, and hateful without those things, and that's not how the world works. Some of you have lived way too charmed a life, way too bigoted charmed a life, far too long, because you get your jollies looking down on people. But we are evening out this world, whether you like it or not. This world is changing, whether you like it or not. And you can either dig your heels down and be left behind, or you can move on with the rest of us and bring that balance and harmony that humanity needs to survive. Because like I said before, and I won't stop saying it, this shit's not sustainable as it currently is. But I'm going to get ready to wrap this up. Thank you all so much for sitting in. G. Feldman, Yoga, thank you so much for stopping by. I will be back on Friday with another topic. You know, as it gets closer to the midterms, more of these Tuesday ones will be focused on election stuff, but it's still far enough off to where I would rather talk about social issues as well. And this was just so important. And I'm looking forward to that next Red Table Talk because it really is important for Jada to speak on this. I think a lot of people want to clown on her, want to punk her out, want to talk for her. And I don't want to do that. I just wanted to relate how I felt as a black woman to the pain I seen in her eyes. Just being embarrassed like that on a global level. And I think a lot of people, they don't want to hear us. They want to say, vote like black women, think like black women, but you don't want to listen to black women. And until we change that narrative, yeah, exactly, G. Feldman, she is. And I think people need to be reminded of that. And Chris needs to apologize to Jada. Whoever wrote that joke, if they want to apologize to her too, fine. But Chris is the one that uttered it and embarrassed her. He needs to apologize. But I'm going to get ready to wrap this up. Go make dinner for the boys. I will be back on social media later on. Thank you all so much for joining in. And I will definitely be back on Friday with the all new Bonnet Chronicles. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really do. I appreciate you stopping by, Yoga. And I will see you all in a few days.